So Gervonta Tank Davis walked down Frank Martin with relentless pressure en route to a knockout victory, and the strategies he used to successfully pull this off are very familiar. One of the subtle tricks for applying pressure that is rising in popularity among fighters is stepping forward with the rear foot first, then stepping with the lead foot. Guys like Canelo Alvarez and Shakur Stevenson use this as a staple in their arsenal when it comes to setting up offense and applying the pressure. This goes against the conventional wisdom of stepping forward with the lead foot first, but Tank did this the whole fight against Frank and had him backing up the whole fight. So why not follow the fundamentals and step with the lead foot first when moving forward? It all has to do with punching range. You see, the distance between two fighters is actually measured by the distance between their lead foot. It's not how far their heads are or their gloves are, and that's because you could manipulate your head position by leaning forwards or backwards while standing in the same position, but the distance from where you are standing doesn't change. By stepping the rear foot first, it allows you to step your lead foot into punching range and be immediately ready to punch. This oftentimes will pressure opponents because being in punching range is a dangerous position. They are also thrown off by the fact that the rear foot stepping opponent is immediately ready to punch as soon as they step into range, because they are more used to seeing someone step with their lead foot into range first and have to take the time to follow with their rear foot to put them back in a balanced stance that isn't too wide so they could punch. That small window of time isn't available when the opponent steps their rear foot into position first, and this could pressure you into creating distance to reset. However, stepping forward rear foot first is not the fundamental teaching for a good reason. You are left much more off balance when you step rear foot first, as you are left in a narrow stance until your lead foot reestablishes the stance. Getting caught while narrow is much more likely to result in a knockdown than getting caught in a wide stance, and Dimitri Bivol famously exposed this weakness against Canelo Alvarez, timing his punches off of Canelo's rear foot steps when his stance is narrow. Another reason the rear foot step first is used is to also trick your opponent with distance deception by manipulating your head position like I mentioned before. So it's really hard to see this, but we notice Tank steps forward rear foot first, as we said. He then leans his head in with his guard up. This manipulation of his head position, leaning in, not only makes him look closer than he really is, but it also baits Frank to punch the guard. The thing is, the punch only makes contact with the guard, so Tank isn't quite in punching range yet. From here, Tank takes another rear foot step and lead foot step to sneak into punching range, and disguises his step by leaning his head back onto his rear foot. It's very difficult to see since the feet aren't in the shot, but he is leaning back as opposed to leaning forward like he just was. We notice Frank's jab once again only hits the guard, making it seem like Tank is still out of range, but he really is in range because his punch would reach if Tank was not leaning back. This is the distance deception. The lead foot determines distance, and since Tank stepped his lead foot into range, he's already standing in position to simply bring his head back into normal stance and counter Frank's next jab. Tank doesn't get his head off line as he throws, so he actually trades with Frank's jab, but you could see he tried to counter it. The thing is, the distance deception trick has been solved by Dimitri Bivol when he used Canelo's lean-in as a cue to attack, since Canelo would try to hide his rear foot step behind the lean-in. Bivol's attacks would be timed with the rear foot step and would push Canelo off balance when his feet were narrow. Frank occasionally showed that he knew this and timed his attacks on Tank's lean-ins to catch him stepping his rear foot. However, Tank is not a one-trick pony with this, and has been mixing in shuffle steps to change up his timing to remain unpredictable. You see, the difference is one method is stepping the rear foot, then the lead foot one at a time, so that one foot is on the canvas at all times. The shuffle step, while also stepping the rear foot first, is much faster than stepping one at a time, but momentarily leaves both feet off the ground. This is much more dangerous since getting caught with both feet off the ground is more dangerous, but has the benefit of getting into position much faster. So once again we see Frank catch Tank stepping his rear foot behind his lean-in, and in just a few seconds later Tank switches to the shuffle step to get into range much faster, and throw Frank's timing off. Frank's attack is too late as you see Tank's feet are already set, so Tank is able to slip and counter. and so Frank never seemed to have an answer for Tank's shuffle step into punching range. There's no tell like the lean in, and he can't afford to look down at Tank's feet, so he had no way to time Tank in that small moment of time when both of his feet are in the air. Frank also seemed so caught off guard by how fast Tank was able to get in his face with the shuffle step that he often resorted to backing away to reset, and thus the pressure game was established. Again, you see Tank shuffle step, and there's no tell when he does it, so Frank can't find a cue to help him time it. The shuffle step is also very fast, so Frank's punch is much too late. Tank already has his feet set to be able to dodge it, and then is able to spook Frank into retreating into the next corner, and so it was rinse and repeat of Tank pressuring Frank into the corner and unloading on him. Frank seemed so intimidated by the punching power of Tank that he rarely ever tried to counter Tank's haymaker-like shots. I don't blame him, but there was no way he was going to win this fight without deterring Tank from firing at will. Frank did show the ability to break through Tank's high guard at times, but he simply didn't have the punching power to deter Tank from walking right through him. You can have the greatest strategy and have the highest ring IQ in the world, but boxing is a physical sport, and the reality is there's not much you can do when someone walks right through your best shots and knocks you out with one shot. And the last thing I want to say is that Frank talked about in his post-fight interview that he knew Tank was trying to wear him down with the pressure, to try to get him to move around and throw a lot of punches. He said he wanted to slow the pace down, but he didn't utilize one of the best ways to do that with low commitment, and that's feints. Feints give your opponent something to think about among many other uses, and they are much more energy efficient than punching. While I don't think this would have magically won him the fight, I do think it's a good way for Frank to improve his craft as he becomes more experienced at this level. Frank couldn't slow the pace down and had to resort to punching and moving every time, only to get walked into the same corner again. And that's going to do it for this one. This is my first video back since my main channel has been copyright struck to termination. Before I thank my patrons, I want to thank everyone for all the support during this crazy time. I hope I can look back at this video in the future with the relief that everything ended up alright and my channel was saved. But as of right now, I don't know what the future holds. I'll either lose everything in the next 10 days, or I'll win against these copyright claims. Everyone who has reached out to me to offer words of support or advice in the last few days, from the very bottom of my heart, thank you. And as always, special thanks to my GOAT tier patrons, Jason Maheenan, Grant Gabriel, Albert Chen, Gostali Geza, Marshall Bott, Jesus Galindo, Nyan Valdez, MSM Neil, Kashiv Zaman, User RC, Corey Bochi, and Daniel Contreras, as well as my channel member Lucas Miller. You guys keep the channel going, or the new channel going, I should say, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Thank you all for watching.